It's that time, so if I may have your attention then, I will call to order the oldest Lions Club in the world. And so welcome to everyone. I'm Lion Rudy Munguia, and it's my pleasure to say welcome on this 8th day of October. All right, I'm going to ask our host today, Mark Hastings, to brief us quickly about the Zoom procedures, and then Mark will also be leading us in our pledge. So Mark, if you will, please.
Yeah, sure, Rudy. As everybody, as we've said before, is that if you're not currently speaking or have something to say, then please mute yourself. Sometimes we pick up some background noise and it interferes with the person who is speaking. So just be sure to do that. When we come to certain times you want to speak, you might just want to raise your hand or just speak out. So that's pretty much all there is to the procedures.
All right, thank you. So if everybody is ready, if you will stand as you're able to, we will begin with the pledge, and I'll turn it back to Mark.
Okay, just a minute. Let me get my flag up here. Hang on a second. There we go. Oops. Gotta get it all going here. Sorry, I wasn't quite as prepared as I thought I was. Okay. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now for the pledge to the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Yeehaw!
Yeah, all right. All right, thank you. Let's see if we're still unmuted. Okay, I think we are. So thank you, Mark, for leading us in our pledge at today's meeting. And we're going to proceed then. And I know we have our speaker here, and we will introduce him as in a more formal way, but welcome him as our guest today. But do we have other guests that we might recognize at this time? I'm not sure I see any hands up. Okay, so we may have others join us later, and if we can, we'll recognize them at the end of the meeting. But for now, let's proceed then. And for announcements, we were contacted by the Meals on Wheels office. We were not scheduled until December to participate with the Meals on Wheels program, but they did call us this week. I called our secretary, Leonor, and she sent out an email to everyone. And I want to say thank you to those that responded. In just a few days, we have, I believe, 16 Lions that will be helping tomorrow, Friday at the Meals on Wheels office, and we'll do and that will be similar to what we did about 2 weeks ago, loading meals onto cars with drivers that will actually take the meals to the different clients. So thank you very much to those that volunteered. I understand that there will be something different tomorrow as far as a format. There will be 2 shifts because we have enough volunteers. There will be a shift from 8:30 to 10, and then the second shift will be from 10 to 11:30. So Leonor, if I may just double check with you, is that about correct?
Yes, but they are asking this time for us to be there 15 minutes early, so 8:15, so that we have things set up to start at 8:30, the stations. And then the next shift, instead of 10, will be 9:45. So just extra 15 minutes so they can go over procedures and get everything set up. But other than that, all good.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And again, thank you to those that have volunteered to help us. This is a service project, and our role as Lion members is to be part of the community and provide service, and this is one way to do it. So again, thank you. All right. I want to see if John Niefler is on. I'm not seeing him on the screen. I mentioned John, and I wanted him to say a few words about the peace poster contest. I think all of us are aware that kind of follow the news that this week the AISD schools started in-person classes. And with that, there were some decisions made that have affected our Lions Club participation. And the first one is the peace poster contest. They are not, the district is feeling like they need to preserve the safety and distancing for the students. And so our Lions Club wants to certainly recognize and abide by that. And we, as a peace poster contest, will not participate this year. And it is most unfortunate because there was much benefit. We felt like there was benefit in our participation at the Gus Garcia school last year, and this year it was intended to be at Gus Garcia School as well as at the Bertha Means School. But anyway, it is what it is. COVID-19 is here. We need to recognize and respect it. And so we will look to the year 2021 to proceed then with our peace poster contest and involvement with the schools. But John Niefler deserves our thanks. He had already set up judges. He had already been ready to contact the teachers and set up the procedures. And so there was a lot of planning and involvement that John and his committee had already gotten involved in. So thank you very much to John and the committee. But as I've stated, we're looking now to the year 2021 when we might look at our peace poster contest again. Okay, so those were the announcements. Let me move on to our birthdays. And again, this is the second or third week that we have no one with birthdays this week. So we are ready to move on. Is Scott Hendricks with us yet?
Not here yet.
All right, Scott is our tail twister, and we'll just go over that and go on to the next part for right now and catch up with Scott when he's able to join us. And now I need some help from Mark, if he will. I'd like to give an update or a progress report on how we're doing with our rose sales. Everybody knows that we're in the middle of our rose sales at this time, and our delivery date is on October the 29th. So here is a chart that our secretary, Lion Leonor, prepared for us. It's kind of one of those, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So you can see those that are already actively participating in the sales. We still have room for more to begin their sales. And last week, we reported that we were at about 50 dozen sales, and this week, with just a little bit of push and a lot of involvement from our Lions Club members, we are up to 112 dozen roses. So remember that our goal is to sell at least 200 dozen roses. And so here, thanks to some top sellers here at the top, thanks to Jim Roberson, who has really made the chart look especially good, and then the others that are catching up. Remember, our encouragement is that everyone, all our Lions Club members, and we're almost at 100 members, that if all our Lions Club members sold at least 1 dozen, that would get us to about half of our target. And but those that can sell up to 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 dozen roses, that is especially good. So in any case, you can see here where we are. We'll update this for next week. And
I think Tommy wanted to say something, Rudy.
oh, okay. I'm sorry, I can't see your screen, but go ahead, Tommy.
I'm actually making this announcement for my son, Michael. I think they've got some good news for you in regards to an effort that their firm is putting together for the Lake Travis School District. And I think you'll be a little surprised at the number of roses that they'll be securing. But they're doing a head count right now for all the teachers at Lake Travis. And I think Michael will give you that information later. But I just wanted to say he's going to make you look really good all of a sudden.
Well, thank you so much. That's wonderful news. Yeah, you can break in any time with breaking news like that. So thank you. So we'll look forward to what Michael might be doing with the teachers at Lake Travis. So that's wonderful news. But and those are special efforts, and we're thankful for that. But for our everyday average Lions Club, all we're asking is 1 or 2 dozens to be sold. So let's not lose hope and that others are getting way ahead of us. No. We're just aiming at 1 or 2 or 3 dozen. So for each member. So okay. Any other comments or thoughts? Yes.
Yes. I thought I sent you 10 names for the rosaries, and I saw you have 9.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have said that this chart is 24 hours old.
No, but I'm talking to Eleanor. Eleanor, let's just try to see if it's a correction.
You only sent me 9, but I'll check it out with you later. Don't worry.
Yeah, we'll get together. And, okay.
All right. Thank you for that. Any other thoughts or comments about the chart? Okay,
Yes.
so thank you, Lenore, for preparing that. Yes.
We sent in orders for 3 dozen already, just last week.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Sandy. I think Leonore may.
Some of the orders that have gotten to us through PO Box, I still don't have them. They're just counted in as numbers, but I don't have the names yet because Ann Ward is the one picking up or the PO Box. So I will get that information this week, and it might be that your orders are already in, but the name is not under a specific name. So I do apologize for that, Sandy, but it should be probably in Ann's hand already. No, don't worry, okay? And thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sandy. Yeah. All right. We'll update this chart for next week and see how it compares. All right. If there are no other thoughts and questions about the chart, we'll move on. And again, but before we do that, let me say thank you for everyone's efforts in doing this. And I see Jim kind of being on the screen. So thank you, Jim, for showing us the way there. Appreciate all of that. Okay. And I don't see Scott joining us yet, so let me move on. And JP, I think we're ready for that exciting moment in our meeting when we have our Rose Day auction. So if you will, please take it away.
Well, Rudy, if this is exciting to you, I don't know what else can be exciting more so. But what I was going to do is offered to sell Roberto that dozen roses that he thought he bought. You want to buy them outright, Roberto? I guess not. All right, we will auction, and perhaps I should charge Scott a small fine for not being present when he's supposed to be. Is that okay, Rudy?
I think so. Yeah, that'll be a nice turn of events for the tail
All right,
twister.
anybody can be a tail twister, but right now we're going to sell some roses, and you see that beautiful dozen right behind Rudy. The roses do look exactly like that as a reminder of what you need to be selling, and we are way behind, and some of us are on the low end of the count, but we're working on it. So who'll start the bid with $5? Give me 5. Anybody give me 5? Somebody raise your hand. Come on, 5. There's 5. 2 5. Who'll give me 10? I got 10. Come on, 10. Sandy. 15. Tommy. Chuck Mandelbaum, 20. You raise your hand now. It's 5 more. 25. Tommy. Rudy, 30. Anybody give me 35? 35. Looking for 35. Mem got 35. Anybody 40? 40. Tommy. 45. Chuck. Anybody 50? Anybody 50? Where do I see 50? Where do I see 50? I got 45 from Chuck. There's 50. Jim Roberson. 55. Come on, 55. Come on, 55. I'm looking for 55. Who'll give me 55? Rudy, is that a full dozen behind you? Not one short, is it?
It's a butcher's dozen.
It's a butcher's dozen. Baker's dozen, I think it is. Chuck Mandelbaum's in for 50. Who'll give me 55? Somebody give me 55. I'm looking for 55. Chuck is in for 50. And Chuck is going to buy some roses. Congratulations, Chuck.
Wow.
They'll be delivered to you by Robert Watson.
Thank you, Chuck.
It was Jim Roberson at 50.
Uh-oh. Did
I
we?
thought I had Chuck at 50.
No, you had Jim Roberson at 50. If Chuck wants them, he needs to give 25, 55, I mean.
Well, I lost count again.
You lost count.
Chuck,
again.
what do you think? 55?
I'll do 55.
All right. Jim, you don't have another bid coming. Chuck bought them for 55.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to all that joined in the bidding, and thank you to our auctioneer JP, and especially to our winner Chuck. So Chuck, your roses will be delivered. Okay. Well, not seeing our tail twister. We have just a couple of minutes. Anybody want to improvise for the tail twister while and then we'll move on into our program. Everybody's all right? Okay.
Rudy, I have a question for you. Is a tail twister where you get to share a little bit of humor?
It is. It is.
Could I share a little bit just in case Scott isn't able to make it today?
Yes, please.
Okay, well, I read a story the other day about 2 cowboys who got lost in the desert with no food. Eventually, they came across a shrubbery covered with pork. One of the cowboys exclaimed, "A bacon tree! We're saved!" As he jumped off his horse and ran toward the shrubbery, he was riddled with bullets. Turns out it wasn't a bacon tree after all. It was a ham bush.
Oh, you are an honorary tail twister. That's exactly the kind of jokes we get our tail twister.
Very good, very good. Personal favorites.
Right. Well, that's a good kind of a semi-introduction to our program, and but we need to ask our lion Patty Robinson to give a more formal introduction. So we'll turn it over to Patty. Yeah, Patty, if you will, please.
Yes, you just heard from my guest, Chris Tabb, who is our speaker today. Chris, he has his Master of Arts degree from the state of California in special education and teaching visual impairments and blindness through orientation and mobility. He is a certified COMS. COMS is Certified Orientation and Mobility Specialist. He works in our outreach department, serving the orientation and mobility needs of approximately 11,000 blind or visually impaired school-age children in Texas. You should Google his name. You'd be amazed. He has recently returned to us from Maryland, And we missed him so much that we didn't even post his job. We just waited for him to return. Chris got married in April to Angela, a Lion in Bryan College Station and also in Tennessee. Chris was a Lion in Cedar Park, and he has, and as a couple, they're gonna look into joining the Wimberley Lions Club. Chris is going to talk to us about orientation and mobility, and he has been our comedian extraordinaire for the students as long as I can remember. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Patty. I'm going to try to share a screen with the presentation. I don't know if I'll be able to see the chat real well while that's going. So if anybody has any questions or things that they'd like to share, please just go ahead and do so. I'm going to try to share the screen now, and maybe then once I get that up, you all can let me know if you see it.
It's there.
Okay. Cool. Okay, so we're going to start with just some overview of what orientation mobility is, give some examples. If anyone has any questions, please just go ahead and jump in with those. This is just a street sign with a pedestrian with a cane in his or her hand crossing the street. This was near UT outside of seminary, I think. But it always reminds me that we hope that the angel's wings are on those who are crossing streets, because driving is a vehicular condition. We sometimes forget about our pedestrians, and it's very important to keep our wits about us to make sure that everyone's safe. So what is orientation mobility? Orientation is knowing where you are, where you want to go, and the directions to get there. For some of our students and for some adults, that could be that they want to get to the grocery store. Others, they want to go to the airport to get to Asia. And for still others, it's how do they get from their classroom down the hall to the restroom. They're just getting started with things. The mobility is a process of carrying those things out. So we've got some people that are using public transportation, some people who are solely foot travel, others that are using wheelchairs or other mobility devices to get there. And so that's the mobility portion. Together, it's getting where we want to go. There's some pictures as we go along here, and many of these are students from the Texas School for the Blind and Visually Impaired, along with their orientation mobility specialist. I believe this is a picture from many years ago of a young lady who one of the Lions groups helped to go to Lions Camp and some other activities. So Lions touches many of the students that we work with and families as well. This young lady is traveling with a white cane. She happens to have a monkey dangling off the cord there. Students typically like to make the cane their own in some way. What we try to make sure of is that they leave at least 50% of that cane white, because the white cane laws in the United States across each state protect travelers who are blind and visually impaired, make drivers aware, and that's typically going to show up in many of our drivers, well, just about every driver training packet that I can think of in any state. So we've got modes of travel for people who are blind and visually impaired. Some travel with a white cane, and it's basically like a probe that goes out in front of you and sweeps back and forth. That's your radar. It's your eyes on the ground. It's an obstacle finder. If I'm walking down the sidewalk and there's, let's say, a chair or a fire hydrant, that cane will find it, and I know it's there, and I can walk around it. People who use a dog guide, the dog guide is an obstacle avoider. As you're traveling down the street, you won't ever find that chair or that fire hydrant. The dog will navigate you right around it. The challenge with that is that some of the landmarks that people would find with their cane disappear when you travel with a dog. It's harder to tell where you are, so you have to pay attention to other things like slopes in the ground or building lines that are ending that you can actually hear with an echo. There's also the use of guide technique, where we are actually guiding an individual, by having them hold on to an arm, and it actually gives the person who's being guided more control, more freedom. Because if I'm the guide and they've grabbed onto my arm and I'm walking too fast, or I'm taking them someplace that they're not sure of, all they have to do is let go. If I reach out and grab their arm and try to pull them, they're kind of under the control of the guide. It's not a very comfortable place to be. So by letting them hold on to your elbow, it gives them a little more independence. This is a picture of a student crossing an intersection in Austin, and we've got our crosswalk lines there. The white cane is a symbol of independence. And that white cane is something that we're about to celebrate on White Cane Day. Comes up in Austin. We'll celebrate October 14th. I think in Houston, October 15th. October 15th is really the official day, but the two cities alternate because our events are so large that it allows them both to be represented by agencies who are trying to be involved in both. And I hijacked a little literature from Lions International. In 1921, James Biggs, photographer, I gotta move my screen a little bit to read it all here, and hopefully I won't shift anything for anybody. From Bristol, England, became blind following an accident because he was feeling uncomfortable with the amount of traffic around his home. He painted his walking stick white to be more easily visible. So we're talking now almost 100 years. In 1930, Lion George A. Bonham, president of the Peoria Lions Club, introduced the idea of using the white cane with a red band as a means of assisting the blind in independent mobility. So obviously long history with the Lions and the white cane. In some countries, those colored bands might represent different things. Some colors might represent an individual who's deafblind. So not only are they not able to visually detect certain areas, but they may not hear any of the alerts or other sounds that many of our travelers rely on. But in the United States, typically canes are either all white or white with that red section at the bottom. And this is a picture of students participating, I should say students and staff and other adults, in White Cane Day here in Austin. And this is a day of great pride for students as they travel, letting people know that they can be independent, that they can do the things they want to do. One of the signs in the background there reads, "I am what I choose to become." And for our students, one of the things we'll get to hopefully at the end of the presentation is talking a little bit about the expanded core curriculum. One of the areas of the expanded core curriculum is self-determination. A lot of times the greatest handicap or challenge for people who are blind and visually impaired is not the vision loss or the hearing loss, it's other people's perspectives or perceptions of them that limit them most. They might go in for a job, and before they've even had a chance to interview, the corporation or the person making that interview has already determined, oh, I don't know how anybody blind could do this job. And so we have to help students to overcome those perceptions so that they can just do regular life. They're already kind of starting back from 2 squares behind square one. And so helping them to be able to develop that self-esteem, that self-determination is very important. So the white cane comes in many lengths and styles. Some people like their cane taller than they are. Some people like their cane, the shortest we'd ever want to go is to your xiphoid process, or your sternum basically. For many people, let's just say it's about shoulder height. It's about where we average. Lots of different kinds of tips. There are some tips that roll, some tips that tap side to side, some tips that have a bearing in them, some that don't. They just kind of glide back and forth. The tips can vary like your shoes. You might wear one kind of shoe to go to church and another kind of shoe to go hiking. And many of our travelers use different tips for different environments, as well as different canes. There's also some things called adapted mobility devices. There are many people who are still learning to use a cane or learning to use their appendages, basically. They may not have the motor ability at the moment to use a single-handed cane. They need something with 2 handles or something that provides some support. And so we make an adapted mobility device so they can still have a bumper out in front of them to develop that safe and independent travel until they're ready to transition into using that single-handed cane. This is a picture of a young lady using her cane. On her pocket, on her right side, she has a cane holster, which is like a pouch. I imagine it could be like any kind of holster, but this one just holds the white cane so that when she sits down or she's in a classroom, she can fold that cane up. Her cane is a folding cane and it goes right in that pocket. So she always has it with her. Sometimes people take things away from our students, and then if an emergency happens, they wouldn't know where it went. So we try to keep those things close by so they're handy, just like your umbrella on a rainy day. This is a photograph of a student traveling with a power chair, an electric wheelchair, and using a long white cane that has a large rolling ball tip. The reason that we use that large rolling ball tip with a power chair is that it has less likelihood of getting caught in the cracks between the sidewalk. It would create kind of a kickback effect and jam that cane back toward the individual. This has a greater chance of gliding right over those breaks and seams in the sidewalk. But a cane can be used with a walker, a wheelchair, by itself, all sorts of different ways. This is an example of a young man using a cane that's been adapted from a single-handed grip into one that has two hands, so that he can balance that. He may not have the strength, dexterity, or other, he may have something like cerebral palsy that makes it difficult for him to use his hands in certain ways. And we work to help students develop the ability to use a one-handed cane, but sometimes that's just not physically possible. So we make that adapted mobility device. This particular cane has a curve at the top called a crook handle. And sometimes that will be used to hang your cane over your forearm while you're at the bank. Could be just used to put it onto a coat hook so that it hangs nicely. Lots of different ways that we can use that. I'm going to show you some examples of vision loss, and I apologize if this is redundant for anyone. There's lots of different kinds of vision loss. Most people who we call blind or who are legally blind can still see some things. They may not see at the level of 20/20, where we're looking at that line in the eye chart. The cutoff for legal blindness is 2200 or less, which is basically that big E on the eye chart. If you know the chart's there and you know the doctor's there, but you can't really tell if it's an E or a B or an upside down E, that's the level of legal blindness. For many people, when they take off their eyeglasses, they might see at that level. The difference is that when you're legally blind, it's uncorrectable. We can't make it better than that. The other way to be legally blind is the window of vision, the field of view. When it gets to be smaller than 20 degrees, let's just say it's like looking through a tube of paper towel, that's when you are also considered legally blind. You could read every eye on the doctor's eye chart, but if the field of view has disappeared, then you would still be considered legally blind. And this goes way back to days when we were trying to determine who was able to get Social Security benefits, who was going to be going to work, and they needed some kind of a cutoff. And that's where these numbers came from. So this is an example of, and you can kind of ignore the red circle in the center there. That's just part of the app that I use to take this picture. The crosswalk, the striped area that you would use to get across the street has disappeared because of the fuzziness or the acuity loss due to this visual condition. You can kind of make out that there's a red hand in the pedestrian box on the other side. You can kind of make out that there's a car approaching the intersection, but whatever might be to your left or your right. And so just as an example, on your left-hand side, there could be a car lined up there at the traffic light waiting to make a right-hand turn of you. You would have no visual awareness of that. Many individuals are able to complement or in some ways supplement that information with their hearing. But if there's hearing loss that's occurring as well, that's disappeared too. So we have to work with lots of different ways of using sensory information. This is a central field loss. Many people might experience things like macular degeneration, and you might have much better vision in your periphery around the outside of the donut, we'll say, and the center of the donut has disappeared. It's basically like a dark spot or a gray spot that goes with you wherever you look. When we try to simulate this, we put a piece of, let's say, a little piece of tape in the center of a pair of glasses. The challenge is that you can look around it. In real life, if you have this as part of your retina, that spot goes wherever you look. And so we can't look around it. What we can do is look just above someone's head or off to the side. So we take that better part of the vision and use that for what we want to see, because when we look right at it, whatever it is we're looking at has disappeared. So the peripheral loss is just around the outside. That central loss is just on the inside. We have some other types of vision loss. There are many people now, we have more individuals experiencing neurological visual impairment, things happening, let's say, with the optic nerve and into the brain than we do with actual challenges with the eyeball or optical visual impairment. There's so many things we can fix now. We can fix cataracts We can do some things with glaucoma with some drops and some surgical procedures, but there are things that happen in the brain that we can't do anything about yet. Sometimes soldiers, for instance, go overseas and they might be in the area of an IED, and basically that blast goes off and their head gets sloshed around like a football. And there is many small injuries that occur. We call them diffuse axonal injuries, and those prohibit the flow of information. So now when they get in line at the grocery store, it's very difficult for them to make sense of all the information. How do they filter out all those, let's say, candy bars on one side, the moving belt on the other, and all the people around them? It's difficult for their brain to process that visual information. For many young people that are born prematurely or with other challenges, they might develop or have from birth what's called cortical or cerebral visual impairment, or CVI. And one way to approximate that is if you lace your fingers together and you kind of look through the little holes, that might, it's just as an example of what one might see. By lacing your fingers together, you can see through the holes. The challenge for some conditions is that you can't control where those holes go. So if it lines up at the right place at the right time, great, you can see it. But if not, it disappears. So we have some students who might be able to see something like a button on the floor. They go right to it and they pick it up, and then they bump into a chair. The difference was that the button was in that right hole at the right time, just like looking through a keyhole, but the rest of it was blocked, just like the door, so they didn't see the chair. So sometimes our visual conditions are very confusing. I'm going to go ahead and move forward here. There's just a couple more examples of vision loss. There's some central loss on the left. On the right-hand side, this might be something like diabetic retinopathy, or sometimes we have some retinal tearing. But you get a sense of how you can see some things, but others aren't present. Those details that we might want to be able to see, like at a restaurant, we might be able to move around the chairs, but when we get down to the menu, we don't have the acuity to be able to do that, okay? Some more examples. On the left is a picture without any simulation, and the picture on the right is with simulation, so that we're looking at, let's say, the top pictures. We've got a crosswalk that we can see the crosswalk. There's a pedestrian sign. When we go to the right, there's so much haze or blur that it makes it very difficult to see some of those environmental features. On the bottom, we have the crosswalk with a car approaching the crosswalk, pedestrian light. We can clearly see where we're headed as a pedestrian. Those details disappear on the right-hand side. Again, it's not totally non-visual, or what we call no light perception, which is a bit like just closing your eyes. We have some vision, but it may not be enough to give us the details that we need. So from this picture on the right, on the bottom, if I'm thinking about the drop-off where the curb is, my vision's not going to pick that up anymore if I'm looking ahead. That's one of the benefits of traveling with a cane. It can preview where my next step is going to go. So this is an example of a student who's getting ready to cross the street. And just to give you a sense, he's got his cane out in front of him. On the picture on the top right, he's used his cane to find where he's going to be standing. So what he's standing on top of are bricks that look like they have braille on them. Those are what we call truncated domes, or a tactile warning strip. It helps individuals who are non-visual know when there's a change in elevation or some danger coming up. In this case, it's the crossing that he'll use to get to the other side. There's all sorts of different types of systems that we use to cross streets. If you're not visual, unfortunately, you don't have access to much of the information that's on these signs. You just have to use some of your memory, or maybe what somebody else has told you. As we go a little bit further, we'll get into what's called an accessible pedestrian signal, which is an auditory or vibrotactile. It's the same button that's in the picture on the left-hand side, where placing your hand on that button, it will actually vibrate when you have the green light for a pedestrian. There's also a speaker that will provide auditory information about the crossing, letting you know when to wait and when to go. You have to listen very closely though, because the two sides sound the same. If I'm going to cross North Lamar at West 45th, and I cross when it says cross West 45th at North Lamar, those two street names, the order is very important, because if I try to go just when it said to go and I didn't listen for the traffic, I could wind up like a pancake. One of the other challenges many travelers experience is the buttons, the newer buttons that are on the left-hand side are raised. They're tactile. But on the right-hand side, we have our older buttons that are used, well, they've been used many, many, many times over the years, and some of the arrows have disappeared from the ones on the top. And the ones on the bottom, they're still there, but it's very difficult to feel that tactily with your hand. It's as though somebody put black electrical tape on there to indicate the direction. Another challenge is that there is no consistency in which goes which way. You might get to the next intersection and the one that's crossing to your right is in the opposite position of the one that's going forward. So it's very important to practice some skills there. And that's one of the things that the orientation mobility specialist would work on with the traveler. So I'm going to try to hopefully click and play some sounds here. We'll see if I can get it to work.
Walk sign is on to cross 45th at Lamar. 45th walk sign is on to cross 40.
21, 20, 19.
So we'll go back here. The first tone that you heard was an older style, just a beeping to let somebody know it was safe to cross. They used to use a cuckoo and a peep peep, where the cuckoo would indicate the north-south and the peep peep would indicate the east-west. The challenge was we have some birds that are really good at imitating sounds, and they began to imitate the sounds of those crossings, which could make things a little interesting for a traveler. So those got switched up. The middle sound was just a tone that was what we call a locator tone. That was something that was added in later that helps a traveler to actually find where the crossing pole is, to find the button to press to cross the street. Because if you can't find the button, how can you activate the signal? So that locator tone has been very helpful. The last sound was an example of an auditory signal that provides an auditory prompt so that you know which streets you're at. And it also provides the countdown timer that visually pedestrians see crossing the street. It provided the same information auditorily for the individual crossing who's non-visual. I'm going to go ahead and jump to our next slide here. So we talked a little bit about the guide technique. A guide technique, check the time. Our guide technique is a way of guiding individuals, again, that puts the person in control who's being guided. Basically, they're going to grab onto your arm, either your right or your left, and grab it like you're holding onto a Coca-Cola can or a mug of coffee. You're going to have they're going to have their fingers in between your ribs and the arm, and the thumb on the outside of the arm. As the guide, you'll be in front by one step. Basically, it's a half a step, but when you're on stairs, you can't do half steps. So we'll just keep it simple. You're always going to be one step ahead so that if there is a danger, you pause and they'll pause. You turn right, they'll actually feel where you're going just by holding onto your elbow. We try not to hold hands, not because we like to be really hard or stern, but because holding hands conveys something different for children. It conveys that the adult is really taking care of all of their safety needs and they can just surrender and let go. But what we really want is for them to be active participants. When they're active participants, they're involved in the process. And so traditionally, they're going to be more alert when they are an active participant, and they'll be paying attention for other dangers, where they would have to go if they were doing this on their own. When you are holding onto the elbow, we also receive a lot more information from the guide's body movement. If I step up, the person being guided feels it because my whole body raises up. If I reach for a door to open the door, they feel my body leaning forward. They can intuitively know what to do next. So this is an example. In this picture, we have our guide who is basically a half a step ahead here. And the person being guided is holding right at the elbow with the thumb on the outside and the fingers in between the guide's ribs and their arm. It doesn't matter whether that traveler is on the right side or the left side. It's really just a an agreement that happens between that team. And it might be that somebody's arm gets tired, so they choose to switch, or they go somewhere where there's only a railing on one side and they switch. Here's another example where the student is actually holding onto the wrist, again, rather than holding hands. By holding hands, we take away some of that student responsibility, but by holding the wrist, you still have the guidance, but we have sometimes where it's just, there's such a height difference, it would be challenging for that person to get up to the elbow of the guide. So this is just an adaptation. For our very young students, they might even hold on to our fingers, just grabbing onto 2 or 3 fingers rather than quote unquote holding hands. So I want to talk a little bit about the expanded core curriculum. The expanded core curriculum are skills that we're typically not teaching students. We typically don't have how to play on the curriculum at school because kids just come about that naturally. But what if you heard basketballs and you heard your friends playing, but you had no idea what they were doing? You wouldn't know how to enter the game. You wouldn't know how to initiate play. You wouldn't understand that they're going from one basket to another across the court. And so there are things that we teach deliberately or explicitly because we know that they wouldn't be able to observe it. The same is true of things like facial expressions and reading some social cues. Those are things that they're not going to pick up on. If all of our students are sitting in class and somebody throws a paper wad and the teacher grimaces, if you sit in the back of the class, even if you have some vision, you may not see that facial expression. So we have to help students understand those social cues in a different way. So here's a list of the expanded core curriculum. It's 9 different areas, and we've got assistive technology. So a lot of our students now and adults are using smartphones to do things like read price tags or identify money. They're also using things like voiceover or talkback on their phones to hear what's printed on the screen. We have career education to find out what careers are and how you might have to do things differently to enter them. Compensatory skills, things like using Braille or special listening skills. Independent living skills so that students can understand they can make their own food. They can fill up a glass of water. They might go about it in a different way using a device we call a say when, which basically 2 pieces of wire. When they connect the circuit with the water, it sends off an alarm, or they can just put their finger over the edge. When the water touches their finger, they know it's full. For some folks, it might be something as simple as if they're having coffee, using a white cup if they're having dark coffee because there's more contrast. Sometimes the very simple things allow someone to be independent. We have orientation mobility, recreation and leisure. Again, things that are just about play. How do you do play if you can't see somebody else doing it? Self-determination, like we talked about before, in terms of people knowing and believing that they can do anything anyone else can do. They might go about it a little bit differently, but they can certainly do all those things. Sensory efficiency, using their remaining vision if they have some, using their hearing, tactile senses, proprioceptive, kinesthetic, lots of different ways of knowing information about your world, and social interaction skills. And I'm going to pause for a second to see if anybody has any questions. Not hearing any, I'm going to continue plowing forward.
Yes, you do have some. Gaylord, go ahead. Sorry.
Yes. When and under what circumstances is the expanded core curriculum made available? And I ask because a very, very good friend of mine that many of you probably know of, Lowell Leberman, who was president of the student body at Texas after a hunting accident, put out one eye and the infection spread to the other, but he ended up being a very successful car dealer and beer distributor at a regent for UT. And it was amazing how he was able to not just be active, but he never failed when I would see him that he would reach my tie and say, "Gaylord, what a beautiful tie." Well, he didn't know what that tie looked like, but for whom is and when is the ECC available?
In the state of Texas, and Texas is unique, all school-age children who have a visual impairment and blindness are required by law to be evaluated in this area, and if there are needs, instructed in this area. For adults, those things come about in a different way. They don't have the same rules and laws that our school-age children do. What we have right across the street from the Texas School for the Blind is the Chris Cole Rehabilitation Center, which is now part of the Texas Workforce Solutions. And that provides rehabilitation for adults who, as you've described, sometimes individuals who have had visual impairment occur later in life. We call that adventitious blindness or visual impairment, as well as those who have had visual impairment since birth or congenitally. And so those skills are taught, those independent living skills and other skills are taught at that adult facility or through counselors through what is now, it used to be Department of Rehabilitation, now Texas Workforce Solutions.
Let me just add, for anyone that may not know who Chris Cole was, he was a Texas legislator, in fact, a member of the Texas Senate, and I happen to know him, and it was amazing to watch him work his way on the floor of the Senate and around the Capitol as a blind person with that cane.
That's awesome. Thank you, Gaylor. Any other questions?
No other question. Oh, yes, I do. Sandy, go ahead.
We just saw on, I think it was on 60 Minutes, the story of an architect who, he was even a coach for his son's soccer team or something, and he wound up with a brain tumor that a few days after the tumor was removed, he went blind, and they were giving him career counseling, and he's almost a better architect. He uses, I guess, Play-Doh or something to go along the lines of the drawing, and has a printer that prints Braille. He says he's a better architect now, and he can tell the difference in the surfaces by the way the cane taps or something, and even the heights of the ceilings. It was kind of amazing.
And as Gaylord was talking about the example of the tie, those tactile skills, people don't become, they don't get bionic hearing or bionic touch or become super at that skill. They just use it more. They pay attention more to it. So it becomes more practiced. And the brain actually rewires itself to use more of its processing power to handle the information coming from those remaining senses. And that gentleman that you spoke about, I believe, is also the same. I think he is the chairman of the board of the San Francisco Lighthouse for the Blind. And it really is incredible when we can have those individuals share their expertise because it helps to advance basic universal design for everyone. Terrific example. Thank you. Other questions or comments?
Not that I see. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay. This is a picture of a young man using a monocular telescope, which is just like binoculars, but for one eye. Sometimes the ones that we would use with our students or adults have what's called an extra short focus lens cap. Instead of a minimal 4-foot distance for minimal focal distance, this might be closer to, let's say, 18 inches. So that in addition to looking at the birds or the street signs, you could also read the ingredients on a package at the grocery store or read the signage up above at head level. And so these are other tools that we use to identify when it's safe to cross the street, what the bus number is that's coming, lots of different information. And this goes along with that part of the expanded core curriculum, the sensory efficiency skills. And I'll leave it at that because I think we're just at the last minute. Unless you want me to keep going, I'm happy to do that too.
Chris, thank you very much. If we could just allow another couple of minutes to see if there are any additional questions, but thank you very much for your presentation, and we'll see if there are questions.
Okay.
I don't have another question, but Patty, thank you for arranging such a great program. And Chris, that is so informative, and had no idea, even with friends that were visually impaired or blind, all about the different visual challenges, and you explained them so that even a lawyer could understand them. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Gaylord. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for giving me a few minutes to share. I sure appreciate it. And thank you for everything y'all do.
Yeah, Chris, could I ask one question, please?
Sure can.
It's not that serious a question, but what is the life expectancy of your white cane? I know you were talking about changing the tips, but how long can a person expect that white cane to be useful?
We have some people who their white cane lasts them their entire lifetime because they don't use it. We have others that are so rugged that when they travel, they travel like a bull, and they might go through a couple of canes a year. And so it really depends on how someone uses their cane. Typically, let's say the lifespan of a folding cane, I'm going to give it 2 or 3 years, and then the elastic that's on the inside starts to wear out a little bit. But it really comes to how someone uses their cane. Just like cars, some people can make a car last for 15, 20 years, and others, it's toast in 3 years just because the way they used it.
And along that line, what would an average cost of the white cane be?
Well, let's just say they go from $20 up to $175. Most canes are probably going to be about $45.
All right. Okay.
We had a question from Linda.
I'd like to say hi, Chris. Good to see you. It's been a while.
It sure has. Thank you. Linda Locke was a former supervisor of mine at the Texas School for the Blind and Visually Impaired, and she's dear to my heart. And I was just so happy to be able to see her on the Zoom today.
You did a great job today. And I just want to say the only other time that canes don't last is when those little stinkers use them as weapons.
Yes, that's true too.
I have a question.
Yes.
Robert. First of all, I have a nephew, Robert Torres, who works there for a while. I don't know if you know Robert Torres, my nephew. Anyway, I happen to have a neighbor who is blind, an older man that walks a lot. And I happened to see last week where there was a traffic pole, the light pole that was, and unfortunately the foundation was offset, and he with his cane, he felt the foundation, and then he turned around to go straight, and the pole was right in line, and he bumped his head. Well, that seems to be the most problem for all of them, and I know they're so different. So,
one of the things we work with people to be able to do is to think beyond the edge of their cane tip. I guess for myself, it would be thinking beyond the edge of my nose. I still walk into my cabinets in the kitchen when I leave the doors open. So. What we encourage people to do is to make that sweep of their cane to find those obstacles, but also to listen. Some people have developed the ability to listen so well that they can find a single pole in an area as big as a football field. They use a process called echolocation, just like dolphins and bats. And when that sound comes back, they can interpret the sound to know what's around them. It's a lot like sonar in a submarine.
Very good. No, it's excellent presentation. Thank you.
Amazing. We had one last question from Seidel. Go ahead, please.
Hi. The young boy that was using a monocular.
The monocular. Yes.
Do they ever use two, like a binocular, or why one?
Well, the reason that it's one is because it's a lot lighter to carry around one than two. And so basically it usually hangs on a lanyard so that it's easily accessible right on your neck, and it's just a lot lighter to carry the one than two. And when the student is using that, we ask them not to be walking around because it takes away the rest of the visual world. They're using it more as a spotting tool to identify some piece of information.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Real quick, I could relate to your blur vision because they found a cataract on my left eye last week, so I'm gonna have cataract surgery next Monday.
Well,
so I can see that blur spot that you're talking about.
I'm hoping that the cataract surgery will resolve that, and I'm so grateful that today cataract surgery is like driving through a Jiffy Lube, where we used to have to spend the night. Now it's just an in and out procedure. So terrific that we can do that.
Thank
you. Robert, several of us are a living testimony that you may see better, but you won't look any better.
Well, now you turned down my spirits there, just like you.
Yeah.
With friends like you, I don't need any enemies.
Well, I'm living proof that you don't look better.
No, with friends like you, I don't need any enemies.
But as Chris said, that cataract surgery today is a 10-minute process, and you're out walking, and no stitches, no nothing. It's amazing.
Yes.
Well, let's give our thanks to our speaker today, Chris Tabb. A wonderful presentation, very
Thank you.
educational, informative. Thank you so much.
Thank you for all you do.
We're gonna need to close our meeting, but before I do, let me shout out to John Niefler. John, we thanked you earlier and mentioned about the peace poster situation, peace poster contest situation. But while you're on screen, let me thank you again for all you did in your committee.
Not at all. We're happy to do it.
And just a reminder about tomorrow. Tomorrow is a service day for many of you that volunteered to go to Meals on Wheels. So please remember that. And I believe that brings us to the end of our meeting. So
Rudy?
Yes, Gaylord?
Well, I saw your email yesterday about presentations this afternoon and tomorrow afternoon. Is that something that others should be aware of, or?
Well, thank you very much. Reminded me about that. What Gaylord is referring to is the plaques that are going to be presented to the different optometrists, ophthalmologists that have helped the Lions with vision situations in the past will be presented with plaques. They are limiting the number of folks that they will accept during the presentation to 3 Lions. So Gaylord, thank you very much. I failed to mention that, but I will give a further report on that at next week's meeting.
Well, thank you, Rudy. I didn't mean to intrude. I thought maybe you were looking for people or attendees, but anyway.
No, thank you. No, it's just the opposite. We're being very limited on who might be there during the presentation. But as I said,
you're free to load tomorrow, Gaylord.
I know. Strong back, weak mind work. I know.
All right. Thank you very much. So there being no other business, this meeting is adjourned. You enjoy and